Welcome to episode 1 of I Think That's Right, where today we're going to wade into the thorny topic of measles vaccines and take a look at it through the lens of the data. So, there's been a lot of talk about measles and vaccines lately, one with the recent appointment of RFK Jr., who is known to question vaccine safety, and with a recent death linked to measles in Texas of an unvaccinated kid. With these things in the headline, some people seem a little freaked out about the possibility of an outbreak. So, what's the truth here? I'm not an expert in medicine or diseases, but I am good with numbers. I've got an engineering degree and an MBA, and I love making data easy for people to understand. So, here we go. Let's take a look at what the data tells us about measles and what the real story is. The first place we should look is deaths over time. I think this is a great place to look because it directly addresses one of the main points on both sides of the argument. Let's call those sides the pro-vaccine side and the vaccine hesitant side. The argument on the pro-vaccine side is that we've essentially eliminated measles. We did that decades ago. As a result of the effectiveness and widespread adoption of the vaccine, why would we want to go back to a time when people were regularly dying and being infected with measles? Honestly, it's not a bad point. The argument on the vaccine hesitant side is measles deaths were dramatically decreasing before the introduction of the vaccine, and if the vaccine had never been invented, we'd still be in a very low measles environment as a result of the natural decline. Kind of a good point, if true. So let's take a look at the data and see if any of these arguments hold up. Here's a graph showing US measles deaths from 1919 to present day. And it clearly shows a dramatic decline over time. What we don't know, based on this, is when the vaccine came into the picture. So let's add that. The vaccines were introduced for measles in 1963. So when you look at this data now, it doesn't look like the vaccine was overly critical in bringing down measles deaths. Measles deaths were already down. In fact, in the 40 years prior to the vaccine, the number of deaths dropped dramatically from over 10,000 per year to just 400. And this is with the population increasing from about 105 million people to 182 million people. And it represents a decline in per capita death rate of about 12 per 100,000 people to 0.2 per 100,000 people. So this dramatic decline came in an era with no vaccine. This seems to indicate that the vaccine hesitant argument has validity. The deaths did dramatically decrease prior to the introduction of the vaccine. But I don't think that tells the whole story. Let's take a look at the time in and around when the vaccine was introduced. And we'll zoom into the chart here to see what we can see. And so this chart is the same one as above, but zoomed in starting at 1950. We can see that between 1950, when the vaccine was introduced, we were sort of between 600 and 400 deaths. And after the vaccine, in a few short years, we essentially got to zero. So, the pro-vaccine people are also correct. The vaccine did essentially eradicate the disease. So, both sides are right. Vaccines are incredibly effective, and measles aren't that big of an issue. I think before we can make that statement, let's have a look at what we think would have happened if we had never got the vaccine at all, if it had never been invented. This would simulate if we just stopped taking the vaccine. We'll extrapolate that in two ways. The first way is indicated by this yellow line here, and it basically takes the rate of decline prior to the vaccine and extrapolates that into the future. You can see that, yes, we still have deaths. Present day, we would have around 60 per year. 60 is a lot worse than zero, but as far as things and threats go, Still not so bad. This is sort of a best case scenario type of thing. A worst case scenario would be to say that we would never improve from our 1962 pre-vaccine per capita rate, and that the deaths per 100,000 people would stay consistent over time. Thus, the deaths from measles would follow this dark green line. They'd be increasing as the population increased. That definitely doesn't look like a good story, but the numbers are still sub 800, about 750 people a year. So, what does all this tell us? Well, assuming any of this is correct, we are saving anywhere from about 60 to 800 people a year in the US through the use of the measles vaccine. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I just share the data. You guys can debate that in the comments. Let me know what you think.